Yo, I'm Brendan. Did you know that millions of people are sitting on forgotten fortunes? Your old 401k could turn into a golden nest egg with just a few simple steps. We Americans actually have a total of $1.65 trillion, trillion with a T, in forgotten money in our 401ks. In fact, 20% of all the money that's in 401ks right now is lost, forgotten, abandoned by its owners. Today, we need to figure out three things. Number one, why does our money get lost? Number two, what do we need to do to keep our money? And number three, what specific rules do we need so that we can avoid taxes or penalties or any problems with like the IRS? Let's go. First up, why does our money get lost in the first place? Well, today people are voluntarily quitting their jobs more and more often. And that really peaked a couple years ago at the Great Resignation in 2021. That's when more than 40 million people made a job change. And the industries that were most affected were accommodation, food services, retail, and professional services. You or someone you know probably made a change during that time. And that's what I did 3 weeks ago to make content for you now full-time. Please subscribe. And I left behind an old 401k and my job, and that's what got me thinking about making this video for you. Whenever we make this kind of critical life decision, we're so focused on survival and the future that we overlook almost everything else. We have to figure out a new job and new people and make sure we can pay the bills this month. And how does our last paycheck come through? And we've got to transition where we're working and when we've got to be there and all the stressors of this new change. And in that hustle whirlwind, we rarely stop to remember, oh yeah, we might have a 401k that we're leaving behind there. We should address that thing. So what is it about the 401k that makes it so confusing that people are leaving this money behind? Why do we think we can't take the money with us? Well, the weird thing about a 401k that's different from any of these other accounts we've talked about, the IRAs, any of your normal bank accounts, any checking account, any typical taxable brokerage account, that kind of thing, it's different from all of those because it's what's called an employer-sponsored plan. And so you literally can't just go out and open a 401k account for yourself. It has to be a plan put on by your employer. It's like sponsored by them, and you only have access to it if you're employed by them. And so when you leave that old job, the old benefits are left, the old desk is left, the old paycheck is left. And I think a lot of people rationalize that, oh yeah, the 401k was part of those benefits, and so I've left that behind too. I don't take my rolling chair with me. I don't take the 401k. But that's really not how this works. I don't know if there's some like leftover kind of pension mindset thinking there that, maybe I could only access that money if I stayed there all the way until I retired and now I've lost it because I've left the job. I've heard people say stuff like that. And so we've got to realize that this is a different situation. A 401k plan with your money in it is really yours, except in one instance, now that I think about it. The one instance where your 401k money actually isn't yours is if you have what's called a vesting schedule. This is what was set up in my old job. We actually had a 5-year vesting schedule for any employer match money that went in there. And so what that looked like for me was once I got into the plan, I was contributing money and I was getting only a portion of the match. It took a full year for me to get 20% of the match that they were going to give me. It was like a 3% match. And so I didn't get that full 3% match when I sent the money in. I didn't even get it after a year. I finally had to wait 5 entire years to get the full match vested, which means it's landed, it's secured, it's now yours in that account. And so had I left anytime before that vesting schedule was up, anytime in year 2 or 3 or 4, I would have actually relinquished some of that matching money that I was getting and I was planning on, and I was using the 401k partially because I was getting that money. I wouldn't have brought that with me because I wouldn't have been vested yet. I think that's kind of a worst case scenario. I haven't heard of a vesting schedule longer than 5 years. I think I had it pretty bad. I think from what I've seen, the typical vesting schedule is maybe 1 or 2 years. And for a lot of companies, there is no vesting period. So if you see that on your documentation of your 401k, it says no vesting period, then you know right away that you're good. All the money that's in there is yours. All the employer match has landed. It's yours. You're not going to give anything up if you ever transfer that money out. I was curious though, how much money are we actually giving up? How much more could we have had if we brought along a 401k balance with us? Maybe it's spreadsheet time. Let's just say you worked for a few years at a decent company, they had a 401k plan, and you used it before quitting your job at 25 years old. You forgot the money's there, you just didn't think about it. You moved on to the new job, and you left behind the $5,000 that was sitting in the account. Well, by the time you turned 65, that little $5,000 would have been worth well over $100,000 to you. And if you had left $20,000 in that account over the same amount of time, it could have turned into over $430,000. But those are small starting balances because the average balance in a forgotten 401k account is actually over $56,000 right now. Think about people who might have started several different 401ks over their lifetime and moved from job to job or company to company and forgotten all of them behind. This is a massive amount of money. We've got to stop this. But wait a minute. Why is it bad to leave the money in the old 401k account? If we know how much is in there, if we know that the money still exists, and if it's still in somebody's name, can't they just have the money now? Why is it bad to leave it in that account? 3 different reasons. Number 1, there's heavy fees and expense ratios that are typical in 401ks, and those can eat away at your stagnant account balance. Whenever you've left a 401k behind, you typically can't keep contributing to it, and so all it's doing is sitting there slowly growing over time and getting eaten by fees, by management fees, by expense ratios for the investments you're actually investing in. And the opportunity cost that you experience by not moving it could end up costing you tens of thousands of dollars in gains over a lifetime. The second reason why it's bad to leave your money in the old 401k account is you might be investing in things you no longer like. What if you chose some really silly stuff when you were 23 and you think that that stuff is not wise to invest in now? Could be worth rolling it over into something else and getting into something that's a better investment. After all, how many of us make really good decisions when we're 23? The final reason it's bad to leave your 401k alone is that a lot of 401ks that are under $5,000 in terms of the total balance amount, they can get automatically shifted into these so-called safe harbor IRAs, and then they just sit there chilling in these low return cash kind of investments like a money market fund. And so then you're really missing out on a ton of growth over the course of your lifetime. That $5,000 is going to pretty much stay $5,000 instead of growing into over $100,000 like my last example was. So the best case scenario when you leave your money in the old 401k is it sits there and gets charged high fees and probably makes low returns. We need to save this money from one of its many doomed fates. How do we do this? What do we need to do to keep our money? Did you ever play with Play-Doh when you were a kid? You make shapes and you build towers and you form different foods with it. Then you can smash it together and make a big blob of gray if you want to, but try not to do that. Our forgotten 401k money is a lot like that Play-Doh. When you're still at the job that hosted the 401k, you're playing with the Play-Doh, having a jolly time. Then when you leave that job, you don't have to leave the Play-Doh behind to dry out on the table and then it gets all crusty and weird. Instead, when the Play-Doh is still soft and fresh and smells kind of funny, you just roll it all up, shove it back into the container and bring it with you to a new place to play and create and build. That's the exact same thing that we can do with our 401k money. And whenever we leave the table and we're going to go play somewhere else and we take that container with us, we typically have 2 main options. Number 1, we can roll it into another type of account and keep it growing. Option number 2 is to take the money and run and buy cool stuff like burritos and race cars. As much as I love burritos and race cars, it's probably not a wise choice to take the 401k as cash right now whenever you're not retiring, because you're going to get hit with massive taxes and penalties and you're going to lose 30, 40, 50% of that overall account balance. And so unless you've absolutely got to have that Porsche race car and that carne asada burrito, it's probably wiser to roll it into a new account. And here are options. This is my favorite chart that I've seen all year. It's totally incredible, made by the IRS. How big of a nerd am I to say that sentence? And it tells us the kinds of accounts that we can actually roll our money over into. So don't get lost in the sauce here. We're just going to focus on one row. This one row right down here that says qualified plan pre-tax. That's what our 401k account is. It is possible to have a Roth 401k down here at the bottom, but if you've opted into that, you should know. Otherwise, the vast majority of us are up here at qualified plan pre-tax. So we start here, and what it tells us is what we can roll over our money into. So we're rolling from a qualified plan into a Roth IRA. Yes. That's an option. That's one of the account types we can roll this money over into. But there's a little asterisk number 3 there. And what that says is must include an income, because what this money was that we put into our 401k is pre-tax. That money was never touched in terms of taxes. It was just taken as it was, preserved, and then moved over into this account. So now if you put it into a Roth IRA is after-tax money. And so what that's going to look like to the government is whatever that amount is that you roll over into the Roth IRA counts as income this year. You only have to pay tax on it once, but that 1 year that you do the rollover into the Roth IRA, you've got to be planning to have a big tax bill. I did this once with my first 401k account whenever we were still young. We didn't have a lot of money, so our tax rate was pretty low, and I figured, hey, if I was ever going to roll this over into a Roth, now's the time to do it. And so I did it back then. We ended up having to pay a couple $1,000s in taxes. So it's an option for you, but a lot of these other options are actually tax-free. The next one is the one that I'm planning to do with my own 401k money, and I'll make a future video about that, so get subscribed so you don't miss that, is you can roll over your 401k into a traditional IRA. So the big difference between a Roth and a traditional IRA is just that pre-tax, post-tax status. What that means for us in layman's terms, don't get too turned off by me talking about those terms, is just it's the same kind of money that was in the 401k to start with. So you're taking this money from over here, from the employer 401k that's sponsored by them, that's tied up by them, tied up into that job that then whenever you leave, you can't really touch. You move that over into a traditional IRA. Now you own the account, you manage it, you can touch it, you can keep contributing to it over time, and it doesn't change the tax status at all. So there's no tax bill whatsoever whenever you're doing the rollover. And then we've actually got a ton of other options here. There's actually not an option we can't do with a qualified plan. It's really cool. You can roll it over into a simple IRA, an SEP IRA, which is like for whenever you're self-employed. You can roll it into a 457. You can roll it into another qualified pre-tax plan. You can roll it into a 403b. You can even roll it over into a Roth 401k or 403b or 57b. Remember, any Roth account means you've got to pay taxes on it. And from my research, some new 401k plans or some retirement plans like these over here in the last half of the chart will let you roll it over. Sometimes, other times it won't. And so in that case, you would just revert back to one of the IRAs. But wait, there's rules. What specifically do we need to know in terms of rules or time limitations or penalties or whatever so don't get hit with any unappealing taxes and stuff like that? Well, first off, if you're partway through this and you're freaking out because you're like, oh no, I took the money, what do I do? Or if it's confusing how to roll it over into something else, you actually have a grace period. So you've got a 60-day rollover period. Once you've taken a distribution from an IRA or from a retirement plan, if it's paid directly to you, you've got those 60 days to deposit all of it or just a portion of it into another IRA or retirement plan. I think it's cool that you have that little grace period because maybe your employer, your HR person doesn't really get how to roll it over into the new account. Maybe somebody gets confused along the way and you end up with a check. It doesn't mean you're doomed to pay taxes. It just means that you've got 60 days to roll that over into something else new. And you even have some potential allowances that the IRS can waive that 60-day rollover requirement if you miss the deadline because of circumstances beyond your control. So really check into that. If you're trying to do it and something crazy happened where you couldn't do it, check into that, and I'll put a link in the description so you can dig more into that if you want to. If you know somebody who's changed a job in the last few years, send them this video so that they can go through this and make sure that they get their money that is theirs. I'll also link some resources in the description because there's different tools that can help you locate lost 401ks, which is really, really cool and handy. So if you or someone you know thinks you've lost a 401k, then check out the links below the like button so you can find those and get your money. Retirement accounts are great and they're powerful savings tools, but they're not our only option. I think a lot of people don't realize what a great option we have outside of IRAs and 401ks, and we can retire really well and pay very little money, if any money, in taxes. I go over just how powerful and crazy that is in this video, so watch this one next to see how you can make 6 figures of income tax-free in retirement without even using a retirement account. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.